go.
Hey there, welcome back to the show. I'm John Steele. This is the Funnel Vision Podcast, episode 5. And today we're talking to Mariana Vieth. She is the Director of Marketing and Communications at WSI, a warehousing and logistics company out of Appleton, Wisconsin. Mari and her team have worked with John Steele Consulting for years, and in that time, WSI has experienced a lot of change. And I mean a lot of change. They recently acquired 2 companies, Case and Pack Modal, and they went through a massive rebrand, as well as a replatforming of their entire marketing automation stack. They've also made a number of key hires within the marketing department. And if that weren't enough, they've fully restructured the way that the company does marketing. When I started working with WSI, Mari and her team answered to sales. And for many reasons, it became clear to her and others in her department that marketing should be an independent entity. They talked about it a lot, and they saw a lot of opportunities and benefits that could come from it. But here's the cool thing. Over time, leadership started to see it her way. They restructured, hired, replatformed, and more. They embraced new technologies, new ideas, and new strategies, all in service of the goals that they were pursuing before. But now they were able to track their own metrics, their own goals, and they were able to operate more independently. In this conversation, I hope to find out how an idea that you and your colleagues discuss at happy hour can go on to reshape the entire structure of your company. How does someone become a change agent? And how can Mari's experiences inform others that may be trying to make the leap to more dynamic processes like marketing automation and AI? And how can someone convince people inside of even legacy brands to make these big necessary structural changes? If you're a person known for your big ideas and want to see them implemented, this one's for you. Let's get into it. Mariana Vieth, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to talk to you again, John.
Yeah, good to talk to you as well. So full disclosure, you and I have worked together before, and, I worked with you guys as part of John Steele Consulting, and sort of we worked together on a number of marketing automation projects related to Zoho. And I wanted to have you on and talk a little bit about some of the big changes that have been happening within WSI and how they might inform some of our viewers. So I just wanted to start with a real basic one. So tell me a little bit about what WSI does, what your department does.
Absolutely. So WSI is a third-party logistics, warehousing, and transportation company. It has a subsidiary Case, which is our e-commerce fulfillment brand. And then WSI handles all of that manufacturing, industrial, big, bulky warehouse moves. WSI has been around for 60 years and really grew in Wisconsin with the pulp and paper industry, but has evolved over the years. Now has a big presence in hazardous materials, industrial materials in general, food, and obviously consumer packaged goods with the e-commerce side of things. So my role as marketing director, it's really marketing and communications. So I support the company internally and externally, really leveraging our reputation to connect with the right shippers who need our service.
So WSI, having been around for such a long time, can you talk about the culture and how the company has changed in the time that you've been there?
It's actually one of my favorite things about my job is that when I started at WSI almost 6 years ago, it felt like I was working for a startup within legacy business. Because at that time, we were really pushing to scale the e-commerce side of the business. This was before we acquired Case, formerly known as Shipping Tree, and really separated that brand. Back in the day, it was all under WSI, and we were really figuring out what to do as we went along as far as developing the marketing strategy around it. In that time, we have matured quite a bit. We have clarified business lines quite a bit. So the culture that I think is interesting is that legacy company that has to worry about a long-standing reputation that it's protecting, with also an innovative company who is trying new things, expanding into new markets, new commodity types. So it's this balance, of innovation and ambition and scaling and growth, with also a value of safety and responsibility and maintaining a reputation as a mature company. I actually think that like push and pull is what makes it a company I actually want to work for. I am personally more risk averse than most people would guess. I have kind of an out there personality and I'm not afraid to take a big risk. But it has to be really well calculated. And that seems to be the culture at WSI as well. The goal is scale, grow, innovate, but for the long haul. So don't take crazy risks that are going to, leave you out of business in 3 years or.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. So you don't want to be like a day trader. So we're definitely going to talk about risk and risk tolerance a little bit later, but I wanted to ask about when I first started working with you guys, the company was sales led in that marketing was underneath of sales and reported into sales. And so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. So why do you think WSI set it up this way initially? And how did that impact your role as a marketer underneath of sales?
I think there's a history there. It happened sort of organically because of the leaders that were available and the skill sets that they had many years before I came along. And actually marketing leadership at the company has seen some ups and downs. And what I mean by downs is really as there were leaders and then there were times where there weren't really marketing leaders. Mm-hmm. So I would say it was kind of inconsistent, the strategy behind marketing for a while. So when I joined the company, we had just gone through a transition in marketing leadership and the sales leader just happened to have experience leading marketing teams. They just, took advantage of that and put it all under one. I personally think that was really helpful. That was really valuable to me as a professional because I learned a lot about what actually needed to happen to close deals and what the metrics were that really mattered to leadership. I know us marketers, we love our top of the funnel metrics, middle of the funnel metrics, but at the end of the day, reporting to sales, you learn to value closed business.
Sure.
I think a marketer who values closed business tends to be well liked by sales.
Yeah. No, most definitely. So, examining our metrics from that point of view, really does shift things. And there is, I agree. There is a lot of navel gazing that goes on the marketing side where we sort of, we're sort of analyzing our own actions way more closely than anybody else would care to. Mm-hmm. And that is an interesting perspective.
And here's where I think that is the flip side of that coin, right? Mm-hmm. If you're looking at the metrics based on just closed business, you're not looking at the long, you're too short-sighted. Marketers do need to think at these long sale horizons, the brand reputation that takes years to build. And if you don't create some strong incentives and KPIs around brand recognition and that longer term effort, then who is going to care about it? I have no real motivation behind that. So I think once we did scale enough to justify separating sales and marketing, having two separate leaders, I think that a lot of the improvements we have seen have come from being able to justify saying, I'm not going to worry about just the bottom of the funnel right now. Right. It's my responsibility to look at what's happening before. And I have a leader who is holding me to it constantly too.
So there were these benefits to working underneath of sales, but now it has been moved and you are a separate department from sales. So in the past few years, you guys have seen some major changes. You've acquired two companies, Case and Pack Modal. You also hired two people. That's a lot of change to happen in a short period of time. Has the mission changed? So do you see the mission of marketing with, new companies, bigger staff, sort of the difference in structure? Do you see the mission of the marketing department as different now?
I would say the mission is the exact same, honestly, but the goal has always been to connect the right prospects with our logistics services, right? Mm-hmm. So the splitting of the brand, for example, and making fulfillment its own brand with Case is simply because we feel that we are more likely to reach the ideal customer for our fulfillment services with that brand than if we were to use the WSI brand. Who
Right.
the people we're trying to reach with the WSI brand, a more manufacturing industrial audience, they're going to consume content in a different way. They're going to want to see a different set of data points from us. So we are able to stay one team and share resources, but we also grew enough to justify having a leader who's responsible for this segment, this service vertical, and then me responsible for the segment over here.
So I wanted to have you on for a number of reasons, but one definitely was I wanted to talk through sort of big structural changes like you guys have been going through. You know, when you have a big merger, you have a big move, you have a structure change within the org, you know, those things can create a lot of headaches. It can create a lot of turmoil. It can create a lot of challenges. But I also think if you're involved in that change, if you're involved in the germ of the idea that led to that change, you know, you can maybe see it differently. And I want to know, you know, I think a lot of folks out there might be interested in how that change comes about. So how it comes from an idea to actually happening, because I think we've all worked at places where we want things to change so badly. We have ideas for how they should change. We're in the trenches every day working under it, and we try and make that change happen. And for whatever reason, you know, we can't get it done. We can't get anybody to listen. Change obviously comes slowly, but for certain industries, certain timelines, maybe it doesn't come at all. So I think people would be interested to know, you know, sort of how that process played out, especially at a company that is 60 years old, especially at a company that is in more of a, you know, picks and shovels role of warehousing and logistics. You know, you might not think a company like that would embrace change, but it seems clearly that they have, and that you and your team have had some influence over that. So I was interested in how it sort of started. So where did the idea for this sort of start? How did it start to get talked about?
So you're talking about which change specifically?
Oh yeah, just I'm referring more specifically to the restructuring of marketing being independent from sales. I know that was something that you were interested in seeing happen at one time, and now it's happened.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess the decision to invest in marketing, that stuff, right? To be like, okay, this is not just a function of sales, or it's
Right.
that it's its own department. It deserves its own budget, its own staff, its own leadership. It's a seat at the table, right? Like that was the biggest change. And it came over many years. So again, the people that came before me kind of setting the foundation. And then I had my first 4 years without our current VP of marketing. I think what really helped us get there was, first of all, showing some quick wins, with small quick wins. So like when I started, even just being able to say, we have an active presence on LinkedIn, our website is up to date, and we're showing up on Google, right? We might have already been doing some of that. I focused on showing people that we did that. And I know that there are some departments who will be like, oh, I don't want to feel like I have to prove things to anybody. And, you know, you can just do the work and let the work speak for itself. The work does not speak for itself.
Nope.
It does not.
Closed mouths don't get fed, right? That's the old phrase.
Yeah. So a lot of the work I did was like, okay, I'm going to work with what I can, and I'm going to celebrate every win, and I'm going to tell the story of why that win matters. And I don't care how annoying I am.
Yep.
And it also might seem self-serving, but it actually was in the best interest of the company long term, because as I mentioned, the thing that has made the biggest difference for us is having our own dashboard, which is really just proof. So it was the little proof of, hey, we did X and it gave us Y results. And then kind of taking that up a notch and up a notch and up a notch. And then the other thing was honestly just having the guts to ask for stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put that. I have had people tell me that I will just walk through, like, you don't knock on the door, you just open the door and walk in and ask for what you want. And I know that can be seen as a little aggressive, but I genuinely think we wouldn't have made some of the progress we made if I wasn't that way. And so, yeah, I take some of the credit for those few years that I fought the good fight, like preaching the gospel of marketing. And now we have a leader who is only responsible for marketing. And I think the big pro of helping change come about with that is that he can spread the gospel of the good work marketing is doing, which will keep our budget flowing, which will keep away the people that don't understand what we're doing and are trying to pull back on our efforts, right? Like his whole job is like protect us from stuff we don't have to be in the middle of, and give us the room to go fight the good fight. Because before I was spending 60% of the time fighting the good fight, 40% trying to convince people it was worth fighting.
Definitely. That makes so much sense. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That protection can be so important. You mentioned, walking into rooms and sort of, not knocking, just walking through the door. I wanted to ask how this went from something that you guys discussed maybe over drinks as a department or, in your day to day, to like being in the room where it happens, in the room where people can like actually make the decision to give marketing more resources, hire new people, change the org chart around. I mean, those are some big structural changes, and to be able to do it, you have to not only get buy-in from people on your own level or people directly above your head, but you have to go higher than that. And so I think that's the part where a lot of people run into hurdles. So I'm curious how you got it from here to there.
So first I have to say it's not something I did by myself, right? It's a strategic decision made at higher levels of the company. I do really think the courage that I mentioned before is part of it. So actually saying, all right, marketing is its own department. Who's going to have the courage to go and say, we need to make another hire when we know that we're trying to watch and be mindful of our budget, and it's an investment and we're going to have to justify, and like, man, people are going to roll their eyes about a head count. Like someone has to be brave enough to say like, but this one, no, we need a marketing ops person. And I'll be honest, that was Rich Reba. I was like, oh, that's a big hire. That's a big ask. Like he's the one that had the guts to be like, we need it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the reason we now have dashboards that do the talking for us. Right.
Right. What did you guys use as sort of convincing like proof, when you were trying to get that conversation going? Like, were you using, metrics and wins, that the quick wins that you mentioned before, or were there larger strategic things that you were putting in people's ear? Like, hey, if we were able to do this, we could do this over here. How did you sort of keep it moving?
That's a really good question. So specifically when it depends on what we're talking about, right? Like if we're talking about asking for like more budget, I have found a lot of success of being like, here's what this budget has got us over the last 3 years. If we changed it to this, we think we can get this. Do you want that?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's easier to do with like, things that have like a really direct attribution, like a PPC, converted to a deal. But when it comes to say hiring an ops person, well, okay, that's not so easy to tie to like winning revenue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to just say like, no, but this is required for us to do the job well. So there were 2 things that I think helped us reach that. One, I have to just admit, is the fact that my boss has done it before. He's done it. He's worked for really successful marketing teams at companies similar to ours. And he can say, when I've been successful in the past, it has required the following resources, right? Like I, until recently, just didn't have that experience. I would say, I don't know, I've been working with nothing all along, so I'm taking a risk here.
Right.
The other thing I think was using like the narrative internally in what words people already use to kind of put it back. So for example, we have a joke that our CEO loves to tell about how 50% of marketing spend is completely a waste. The problem is you don't know what that 50% is, right? And lucky for us, our leadership team actually does believe in marketing. They've seen it work in other industries. They know it's not magic, right?
Right.
But I kind of turned that question around and said, okay, are you still willing to spend the marketing dollars knowing that 50% of it could be trash? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, what if I told you I can make that number become more like 20 instead of 50? Because I can give you better visibility. I can give you better data. I can give you better ad management. I can give you, are you willing to invest cost to get those outcomes? I think that kind of like perspective helps, right?
Yeah. 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 It sounds like you're taking, their own words and using it, so sort of taking what they say they want and saying, okay, here's what we need, but that's going to help you get what you want. Here's the pathway to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds like a winning strategy. And also it does help to have people that have done it before that you can point to and say, he says it's a good idea and he's done it before, like that's definitely
you have to be brave enough, right? Like you can't only rely on people who have done things before, but also, like you said, it's a 60-year-old company with a big reputation. Like we can't afford to take needless risk. So if we can get some wisdom from someone who's done this before and save us from 1 or 2 iterations failures,
yeah,
let's do it.
Really. So one smaller change you guys have been through, and the amount of change you guys have gone through is crazy. I mean, I've seen companies that only do this relatively small thing that I'm about to mention. It's only small given the amount of big changes you guys have gone through, but you also replatformed from your old marketing automation platform to HubSpot. I guess you had HubSpot before and then you were on Zoho and then you went back, right? Huge change, something that you guys definitely wanted. But in the grand scheme of things, not nearly as big as some of these other ones. How has that shift been impactful for you? Obviously, I'm a big proponent of HubSpot here. I do a lot of work with it, and I do a lot of work with Zoho also. So, I mean, I've seen how both operate, but I'm curious, how that change has come about for you guys and what you've seen with that.
So we went with Zoho originally thinking it had some simpler modules we could try, it wasn't as scary of a commitment. And then eventually went to HubSpot when we realized we do actually need the full scope of that service and the complexity that it can accommodate. I actually think that was one of the biggest changes we made. We really pushed for that CRM use in justifying switching to HubSpot. Sales wasn't really that bought in. It wasn't until this commitment to HubSpot recently that they were like, okay. And again, because we're going to split budget on this tool that's going to help us track our work better, this tool that's going to help us prospect, this tool that's going to show us what's really working or not and help us report on our results.
Right.
It's been huge.
For your specific goals, it does sound like something that would be super helpful just in the granular sort of tracking of like every object, the way that HubSpot does. So I think the way HubSpot, handles data is somewhat different from Zoho in that you can track so much within HubSpot. You can track so many sort of actions, user actions, and sort of the cause and effect of marketing is sort of shown, and it's very easy to pick out the way HubSpot is set up. So, I'm wondering if that, given that you have needed to prove so many things over time here, and you've needed to continue to back up everything you're going to do and sort of say, here's how we've improved visibility. Here's how we've improved on some of these goals. How has the shift to HubSpot improved your ability to do that?
So first of all, HubSpot is just an easier to work with tool, in my opinion. It's just more user friendly. So I think the quality of the data in there is better simply because the users are using it more accurately. The sales team doesn't hate going in there or anything. The other thing is the beautiful reporting. I think they just do a good job pulling together like easy reports that look nice. Having that in there has allowed us to both sales and marketing. We have these monthly meetings with operations where we kind of talk about, what's going on across our network. Where do we have open warehouse space? What are the opportunities in the pipeline? And we started just pulling up HubSpot as the source of truth and sharing that more broadly. And that, first of all, makes us like look really good. We are on top of our stuff. Like, oh, you have a question? We have a dashboard for it. Like,
Yeah,
oh, you want
absolutely.
to dig into that? You know, we created one that's open deals that we have by region. That way, if we're like really prioritizing, you know, Southern California, we can like pull that dashboard and see like everything that's open in Southern California right now. And we started just clicking into that, and I just sort it by like largest to smallest opportunity. And we're able to say, okay, like, here's what we have open right now. Here are the opportunities and it's just, we're showing it rather than just telling it, or rather than just showing a spreadsheet where we plug the info in, having it kind of
Right.
populate in this nice dashboard just makes it look so much more legit. I think it's helped earned us some respect, and then also helped us see the data in a way that's a bit more actionable. We started getting a bit better information about, you know, like pipeline velocity based on the actual commodity. Like, it's not just what the lead source was or it's like, what type of product do they ship and how quickly is it going to move through the pipeline? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting to think about how user experience of a platform, it goes beyond, you know, your day to day within it. You know, it goes to other people's understanding of what's going on in there is so much more improved because they can sort of see how everything works. They can see how you got to your solution of the problem, and sort of being able to just, that's so interesting to be on calls and just show the HubSpot UI and be like, see, here's where it is. So
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have thought of that as like a change agent, but that's so interesting that
Yeah. Yeah.
just that sort of UI can help with that. So I wanted to talk about change a little bit, and you know, sort of, I mentioned you guys have been through all these really big changes. What have you learned about sort of being a leader through a time of great transition and a time of big change for your department and for your company overall? You know, I mean, leading through a merger, also leading through a restructuring, also leading through a replatforming. That's a ton of change. You know, how have you how have you dealt with that as a department, and how have you sort of learned from that?
Good question. Have I dealt with it perfectly and beautifully every time? No. There were times of change where I was like, what is going on? Is this even the right thing? Like, is this too much? Like, is this going to work? Or I didn't agree with this change, right?
Yeah.
And yet here I am. I'm still around. I personally have this philosophy that if you're going to be a leader or even being led through a change, you have to make a choice about what your attitude is going to be with that change, right? And if you're going to choose to have a negative attitude about it, I don't think you should lead the change,
Right.
right? Like, even if you don't agree with changes being made, but you came together and have a consensus as a group where appropriate, then you have to choose to have a positive attitude about it. If it's a decision or a change that you did not make, you shouldn't lead it if you didn't make it and you don't feel good about it. Now, obviously, we all know there's going to be things and changes that happen that we don't agree with, but you are responsible for leading through it. So again, you have to make a choice. My attitude is going to be positive. I'm positive I can make this work for the better of the company, of the whole company, right? I think the other thing is being willing to say, okay, we're going to do this next, and then we'll see. It's okay to make a change, try it for 6 months, and then say, you know what, it was actually better to go back to HubSpot. That's not a fail, right? That's not a
Yeah.
fail. This is what I learned, and now I'm going to do this.
Yeah, speaking of like metrics and how that can really help, you know, spur on change, you know, do you feel like it's your responsibility then to set sort of like parameters on that? So like, hey, we're going to try something out, but like, how do you define success of that? How do you define failure of that? Like, is that something you feel you need to set up from the outset?
I think so. In fact, I had made myself a few notes anticipating that you might ask me how we think about AI tool
Oh,
implementation.
that's coming. That's coming. I got a number of questions about
So
that.
this actually ties together because my philosophy is the same. First of all, before the change even happens, the question is, why does it need to happen? Sometimes the change happens not because it needs to, it happened because, or it needed to for another reason unrelated to you. But if you have to understand why does it need to happen, then you have to understand what is the desired end, solution. What is the outcome you want? Not even worry about the process, but what's the actual outcome that you want? Who's accountable for that outcome and for that execution of that? And how willing are you to take a risk with this specific change? So, for example, let's say the thought was we're going to separate sales and marketing, and we need to do that because marketing is not getting enough attention because they're working on too many sales activities, right? And we want marketing to be able to have full energy and attention towards activities that will continue bringing us leads for a long, 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 long time. Who's accountable for that? Me. Do I think it's worth risking pulling me away from some sales activities and to try this? Yes, I do think it's risk. It's
Right.
worth that risk. Let's do it.
All right. So you mentioned AI, and obviously, some of the stuff that we worked together on was around marketing automation. I know marketing automation has been a big goal for you and for the company internally as well as externally. You guys have done a lot of really great work. I actually hold you guys up as an example of internal marketing automation. A lot of people don't focus on that, don't focus on operations and process internally, but that can be where some of the biggest bottlenecks, biggest efficiencies can be found. And I think you guys do a really great job at that. But I wanted to ask now with AI, are you guys incorporating AI into your sort of workflows and automations, and sort of how has that process been for you guys? How much are you comfortable with allowing AI to do versus keeping a human in the loop?
Very good question. So the same way I felt about the change, why do we need it?
Mm-hmm.
What's the outcome? Who's responsible? Who's accountable for the result? Is it worth the risk? That's how I feel about applying AI and automation into our marketing processes, right? Like there are a trillion things we could do. Do we need it? Why do we need it? Like, is there an actual problem that it's solving right now, right? So for us, a big goal, I guess you could call it a problem, is the need to scale content output constantly, scale and optimize the promotion of our marketing assets and all of that while still maximizing our budget, right? So if we can use AI to help us scale our output, like fantastic. Would I trust AI to put things out there without my review? Not if it's going to have my name on it. And that's
Right.
like my barometer. I'm like, if it's going to have my name on it, then I don't trust it to go out without my review. But what we have done is really, you're right, focus on the internal ways that we can automate things so that we can scale that output. So for example, drafting outreach content based on intent signals and the account profile in our CRM. So when our lead qualification process comes around, that's another example. A lead comes in, we can have it run, yep, this fits your ICP. Here's information about this company. Here are the products they're likely going to ask about storing, that type of thing.
AI has sort of been like a gateway drug to automation for a lot of people, where they're like, oh my God, we could do this. And you go, I hate to tell you this, but you've been able to do that for so long. You've been able to do that for such a long time. Like, that's just code. That's just like an if then. That's you
You're
could have
right.
done that 10 years ago.
You're right. And that's why I'm saying, like, we've been doing that. The area where we're adding the AI layer is, instead of just prepping the automated, like this lead came in, now you need to send them an email, is that it could really personalize that email to that prospect based on, all of these other inputs. But no, I'm still not having any AI generated content go out to anyone without a human being reviewing and hitting send. And again, that's because unless someone's name needs to be behind that content, someone needs to be responsible for that piece of information that's out in the world, I'm risk averse. I'm just not willing to do that.
I mean, yeah, I haven't met anyone that's comfortable with putting their name on something without reviewing it that AI wrote for them. I mean, I know it happens because you see content on like LinkedIn, for example. Social media is a good example of this, or like emailing, like cold emailing. A ton of people are putting out content that they clearly didn't write, and they are just sending it out there. So I know it happens, but I haven't talked to anybody who's copped to it yet.
The things that I am comfortable using AI for, I mean, there's constant content brainstorming and drafting. That's like everybody does that at this point.
Yep.
I will say I think we do it really well. We've put a lot of time and energy towards developing standards, brand voice documents, like really detailed ICP documents, keyword research, spreadsheets. Like that's where we're going deep on making sure that that's a really effective content agent, not because we want it to write for us, but because we want it to help us make strategic decisions. So that goes into analyzing data. I think using AI to analyze data is huge for me. Being able to put in a spreadsheet and say, pull the pattern related to X topic, right? Keep us alerted of news related to topics that we like to write about. Easy one. And then cleaning things up, like cleaning up data, enriching data, that kind of thing. Those I think I feel comfortable. I think the technology is pretty good at it.
Yep.
Again, you still have to use your gut and critical thinking. That's just like, we all know this by now.
Sure. But a lot of testing has to go into anything relating to AI. And even if it is internal processes, even if it is things that you're just having to do research, for example, like that needs to be reviewed. So yeah, it is very hard to trust yet. And I do see it evolving, but it is still a cutting edge technology. And, you know, I think I'm interested to hear, you know, in the same way that getting a 60-year-old company and getting leadership on board with some of the other changes, you know, new technology is one where you have to sometimes justify moving into that. So beyond just your own department, you know, how has the reaction been to AI throughout the company? Sort of when people come to leadership and sort of say, hey, like, we really want to bring AI into this process. Is there initial like, I don't know, like maybe we don't need all that? Is there proof that you sort of have to show, or do you have to do a process there too of like, this is what we could get out of this?
Yeah. So cybersecurity is a big conversation in supply chain. So obviously we do take that very seriously. I will say the marketing team, I mean, we were definitely early adopters. You know, I wrote like our philosophy and our policy on AI use, like the month that ChatGPT was out in the public. Just because I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to change everything. Like I'm either going to lose my job or I need to be like on top of it. And I just decided I want to be on top of it.
Good for you. I think a lot of people, you know, it came to that a little bit later. So yeah, good for you to be reactive on that.
And so one of the things I took a course through, it was a certification through Generator, and Microsoft and LinkedIn had a collaboration. And one of the biggest takeaways that I had, the angle was like, you don't all need to be technical leader. You don't have to all be implementing these crazy AI workflows and whatever. Like we do still need just leaders who understand the impact of this AI use, the impact of what goes into it, what comes out of it, what tools we spend money on. You need a leadership team that is educated just enough to be able to make some of those critical decisions. And so that's where I've spent most of my time. So until everyone else, like, you know, now everyone else in the company is going, okay, how can we use AI? We use Microsoft products, so we're Copilot lovers over here. But really, my team is already a few steps ahead of that because we've been developing SOPs for, you know, how do you train the agent? How do you test the outputs? How often does this data need to be reviewed? Who has final approval? Like, we have documentation on all of that. And I'm sure some people will roll their eyes and be like, oh, it's just admin, whatever. But like, the governance of this matters. It's really important. It sets the foundation. You know, there's an ethics element to that, a legal element to that, and all of that. And that's where I've focused. So I don't get a lot of pushback. I also am not trying to do anything that crazy.
Right.
But I also don't ask for a lot of permission unless it's things the cybersecurity team flags, like you need permission to add this to your lab, you know, otherwise I'm trying tools and waiting for someone to tell me I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask forgiveness, not permission. That's a big one. All right. So we've reached the end here. I just wanted to ask you, so it's the question that we ask every guest that comes on the show. What's one workflow, integration, automation, or tool that you can't live without?
Okay, I have a project in Claude
Mm-hmm.
that can give me a distribution starter kit. I can't live without it. It is like not that complicated, but it seriously saves me so much time. So when I develop a topic cluster, a content cluster, and start getting assets, I can plug it in here and it knows the campaigns that I usually run. And it'll draft, you know, like a 3 versions, 3 options for each of the distribution channels I need. I rarely use like the actual option but for some reason it just like takes so much anxiety off knowing that the whole structure is set up and I just have to edit. So let me give you an example today. I did this today. So our awesome demand gen director, Alyssa, worked on news stories. We have like a monthly news, warehouse news. Once it was all approved, I read it, love it. We agree on the topics. We agree on what it says. I can take that, put it into my Claude project, and it already knows that I need to create a LinkedIn newsletter. So it'll tell me, here's how you should structure that version of the document, what the intro text copy should be, what the boosted ad copy version should be, what the X copy should be, the LinkedIn, the email, 3 ad variations that could go along, like that kind of thing. Gives me a whole...
That's great. So how long did it take you to put that together?
I don't even know how to answer that question because I don't think it's ever done. It's like
so you're still iterating on it.
Oh, to me, like, that is my job. Like, that will never end. It will never, ever end because, especially with news, well, I suppose like the structure of it, like as I'm working, I start to go, yeah, you know, like this isn't really hitting. Like, I don't want you to write using this tone anymore. Or, you know, are you sure that this is the optimal length for copy on this channel? Like, let's review. So yeah, it's never over.
Yeah, that's where you start to get like skills saved in there and you start to give it context so that it remembers things for you and sort of understands like what you actually need. And that is such an iterative process, and sort of eventually you'll get to a point where, you know, it's built. But when you say it's your job, do you see that as that iteration as a big part of, you know, your role now?
Yeah, actually, I will say we recently just did an exercise where we kind of clarified everyone on our team, what their responsibilities were, what they're accountable for. And I raised my hand and I said, I really think that our content agent needs a manager. Like, that is basically someone's direct report. Someone needs to be responsible for making sure the quality of the stuff, the output is good, right? So our demand gen director, that's her responsibility now. But now creating that content agent and making sure that it's up to our brand standards, that the brand standards, that's my responsibility. You know, so her and I together, like, we do have a big responsibility over this agent. And we now have, again, an SOP that outlines that. And we'll have, you know, daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly tasks around the maintenance of it, because it's so easy too for people to be like, I built it. Did you check? Is it still working? Did it break? How many tokens did it are you paying for it? Like, someone needs to manage that thing.
Well, Mariana Vieth, thank you very much for being my guest today. I really appreciate it. And I It's fascinating to hear how you and your team have managed so much change in just such a short period of time. I mean, like I was saying before, a lot of clients that I meet, one of these changes is like a whole year. So, it's been really cool to hear about. So, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.